magical realm of seeking the light of 1,000 suns. Join us on this journey as we delve into the mystical world of eclectic witchcraft. Brought to you by Maya Skyrika, Gia Storm, and spiritual advisor Lily McNamara from lilyofthelight.com. Together we share our eclectic tips and tricks with listeners at any stage in their chosen magical path. Get ready for engaging discussions, diverse knowledge, and a community that embraces the sparks of magic in your life. Please follow and share our content so we can reach as many like minds as possible. Don't forget to check out our extras available on our Facebook page and website, www.seekingthelightofA1,000suns.com. Thank you for listening. Back to another episode of Seeking the Light of 1,000 Suns. Today we have a returning special guest. She's a licensed psychologist, hypnotherapist, Chai Qigong teacher, Reiki master and teacher, author, and astrologer. She also has many professional coaching certifications that help her clients align with their authentic self while exploring and developing spiritual awareness. Dr. Eleanor Haspel-Portner's research, teachings, webinars, energy mapping services, and various publications focus a lot on multiplicity and the importance of being balanced in the four worlds of human existence for body, mind, and soul wellness. Her unique approach integrates spirituality, esoteric methods, and psychology to assist with clearing issues of trauma, balancing the subtle energetic bodies, and teaching individuals to connect with their higher self to be one with their core being. Welcome, Dr. Eleanor.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we're so glad to have you back. The last time that you were with us was so enlightening and interesting that I'm so glad that you're with us again today.
Well, thank you.
So you have this new publication out that I find so intriguing because, first of all, it's called the Cosmic Guidance Guide.
I can hold up a copy of the book.
Yes. There. So the Cosmic Guidance Guide, you have this set up for inner exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you say this differs from like the popular shadow working guides?
The work in Cosmic Guidance originated from me looking at my multidimensional charts in the four worlds and looking at how the different worlds interface in each day. And the work, the shadow working, which deals primarily with emotions, limits consciousness to the mental world. What I found in my work, which is so interesting, is that, and it surprised me, quite honestly, that when I did the research on the human design body graph and recognized that it was an incomplete system because it didn't include the other dimensions of consciousness. And the human design system it claimed that it was based on the Kabbalistic tree of life, chakras, astrology, and the I Ching. And that is to some degree true, but the information that was coded into the tree of life was never actually integrated into the body graph. So when I did the scientific research on 30,000 cases, I realized that it was an incomplete system. The body graph itself held, type held, but other components of it did not hold. And so as a researcher, and as an astrologer, I was able to do the calculations and get it down to 10 lunar minutes in multiple matrices. And I was given by a download the angelic or emotional matrix, which, as I looked at it and realized that the emotional reactivity exists only in the physical and the mental world. And psychology as a field, and I've been educated, my PhD at the University of Chicago integrated psychology, anthropology, sociology, and biology. I didn't know at the time that what I was studying was the four worlds. Psychology is looking primarily at emotions in terms of consciousness and unconsciousness, but not telling us how to transform emotional reactivity into consciousness. And that comes through the matrices, that the emotional world is in the physical realm and the mental realm. In order to transform emotional reactivity, it moves in terms of our consciousness frequency into the spiritual realm. So the emotional world, which is a higher octave than the mental world, is a portal to emotional reactivity and to the mental world. And it is there for us to learn how to transform emotional reactivity into consciousness. The psychological field does not work with that construct. And therefore, it's limiting us between consciousness and unconsciousness and working at the level of the problem instead of beyond the level of the problem, where we get a bird's eye view of what has made us emotionally reactive, and we can transform by moving to a different state of consciousness. And so I always encourage people to build their spiritual toolbox rather than their mental toolbox, because it's the spiritual that really is transformational.
That's so awesome because, I've done some shadow working and I've done some type of guided journaling from books, and it was very eye-opening. Don't get me wrong. It was very eye-opening. It allowed me to see the why. It allowed me to reflect on things about myself. And it allowed me to kind of look at and try to rationalize things when I'm having these emotions. But I can honestly say that it hasn't changed me. I haven't transformed. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, like having the awareness
Right.
was very empowering. It was powerful.
Well, it gives you self-knowledge,
Right.
but
Right.
not transformation.
Right. So,
And we want transformation.
right.
So we don't repeat patterns that are disempowering instead of empowering.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, with that in mind, would you mind touching a little bit on how the tree of life and how the transformation works in your four world?
Sure. The tree of life is the foundational basis for all of my work because it's the ancient most ancient of the systems, that and astrology. So the tree of life is a model of the process of what Jung called individuation, or in the psychological field, self-actualization. It's our process developmentally from being unconscious to recognizing ourselves as a multi-dimensional, not just conscious being, but spiritual, capable of enlightenment, of recognizing that we are beyond this three-dimensional existence. And when you study the tree of life, you start from a process standpoint at the bottom of it, at the base, at the physical realm, where the interesting thing is that the bottom sephiroth, or circle on the tree of life, is divided into 4 sections, the 4 worlds. And each other circle on the tree of life is also divided into 4 worlds. And the process by which we develop takes us through steps developmentally. And it forms what in psychology is called a Gutman scale. And that scale describes developmental sequences in human development, or actually even animal development, where you have to move and complete one stage before you can move to the next stage. And if you miss a stage and do not complete it or resolve it, you're stuck. Now, that's not always visible to people. But in my work as a clinical psychologist, I recognize that a lot, especially in individuals who have learning issues. So even for myself, I had a lot of visual issues and learning issues growing up, which were never diagnosed. And when I was in college, I studied all the time and I took extensive notes. And I didn't know at the time that it was because I had auditory sequencing issues. In other words, I couldn't grasp all of the information listening to a lecture. So I would take very extensive notes and I would memorize my notes and I would do really well. But when my kids were in vision training, I realized I had auditory sequencing issues as well as issues with depth perception, my eyes not working together. And I, at one point, was sitting with a friend of mine who was a educational psychologist. And I said, you know, I feel really stupid sometimes because I can't repeat. If somebody gives me 6 or 7 numbers, I can't repeat them backwards. And she said, oh, I can fix that. That's auditory sequencing issues. Give me 2 sessions and I'll fix it.
Wow.
Whoa, I didn't know that. But it's a Gutman scale. I could not learn how to do it without solving the developmental problem that I had.
Holy moly.
Yeah, and you know, I am a strong advocate of testing all children to see what learning issues they have. Visual issues, auditory sequencing issues, but you have to complete one stage on physical development before you can go to the next. It's like you can't walk before you crawl. You can't stand before you sit. Those kinds of things are developmental sequences that are essential. The tree of life is that way in terms of psychological processes that in psychology we often don't talk about. developmental stages, like a teenager tries out different roles before they settle on who they want to be. If they don't go through that, they may be what we term a poor eternus. They're always seeking after adulthood and they never quite find it. And we've met people like that, people who are not successful because they don't know who they are.
I think I know somebody like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you do. I think
Wow.
we all do, you know? And so, as a psychologist and working with the tree of life and seeing that each Sephiroth has four worlds, our deck of cards has four suits. Jung described four types. Myers-Briggs uses the four types that Jung described, but they don't work with the integrated world.
Right.
And we're integrated beings. So in the tree of life, as you move up that tree, and each Sephiroth is a different developmental stage of consciousness, by the time you get to the middle of the tree, you're beginning to move to higher octaves of consciousness. And the four worlds exist in each developmental stage. So, excuse me, I'm not at the point in my own work where I've outlined all the developmental stages in each Sephira. But ultimately, I think psychology could go there. But what I am beginning to teach is that my noble energy maps, which are an expansion of the human design system and much more complete, show that every human being functions in four worlds and how those worlds come together in them in an integrated whole is key to them manifesting their potential and understanding who they really are. Because we're not simply a manifester or simply a generator and stuck there at the moment of birth. The moment of birth is one moment in time. That's an important moment in time, but a baby is still developing outside of the womb in terms of the mental world, in terms of all the worlds. And at 3 months old, all of the cosmic energies in the zodiac have been programmed into a baby. And at 3 months of age, they develop volition or choice. And it's at that point that their integrated worlds come together and push them to manifest who they are in the world spiritually. Because the spiritual world integrates all of the other worlds.
I can't believe that happened so young. I would have never guessed that.
That's why the emotional world, which is part of the mental world, it's in that conscious dimension. So let's say a 3-month-old baby is uncomfortable in their crib. How do they communicate that physically the sheet isn't right for them or they're too warm? They cry. They may get red in the face. They may hold their breath. Depends on the baby. Could be an easy baby who doesn't complain and who goes along with whatever is being done to them. But from that point, because we're not thinking about the four worlds, parents are looking at the concrete data in the moment. They're not thinking, oh, maybe this baby is responding to energy.
Mm,
Maybe this
yes.
baby is picking up my angst
Mm-hmm.
or tension. And so, unless we recognize that the emotional world is not transformational, it can be dealt with. We can use skills of listening, of probing to go deeper into each world. But each world is state specific. And we never solve a problem at the level of the problem. So my work is here to expand psychology, to show people that personality and who we are is much bigger than who we thought we were. And as multidimensional beings, we can manifest much more than we've been told we can manifest.
Yes.
And the map that I have shows that. And the Cosmic Guidance book is based on me looking at the charts of the worlds for each day of the year. And because the sun and the earth are consistently in the different astrological degrees each year, I was able to make the book evergreen by nuancing some of what I wrote and making it a little bit more general than specific to the components of a chart that would be unique to that day. So I can share my screen and show you what the advice looks like.
Yes, absolutely. Now, when you say evergreen and that, these cycles repeat, that means that you can buy a book each year
Yes,
and see your progress from year to year and things that have changed in your
exactly.
life. Okay.
And it's designed so that, well, let me share the screen because it'll be easier for people to see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
This is a picture of the page. So I picked January 6th because that's today.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice in the mental world is an energy follows thought. Stay true to what you know aligns with your higher self. So, how might somebody use it? Well, if I were out in the world today and somebody asked me to do something and to commit to something, I would take the question inside and I'd ask myself, is this something that's right for me? Is this aligning with my values? If
Would
it
you,
is, what?
I'm sorry.
Go on.
Oh, I was thinking, while I'm looking at this, I'm like, how would I use this?
How
I
would
would,
you?
I would actually take like that first one, the mental one, and I'd make an affirmation out of it and maybe even a meditation out of the four. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you work with affirmations or not, but I mean, for the whole day, my affirmation could be that I'm staying true and aligned with my highest self.
And look at the spiritual. Listen to what your body tells you about the effect of others on you.
Mm-hmm.
Very often, because the spiritual is a different matrix than the mental world, uh, many people are energy sensitive and don't know it. And so when they're around other people, they pick up on the other people's feelings. My husband's a perfect example. He's a medical doctor, but he's a physical empath. So when he's with a patient, if the patient has a headache, he picks up the headache. If they have a stomach ache, he feels it in his stomach. So for him, paying attention today to the effect that somebody has on him is important because everybody is more sensitive today to the effect other people have on them because of the way the day is configured.
Yes.
Emotionally, I recommend using your inner power to be aware of your feelings on all levels. So, and if you were emotionally reactive, you would say, where does this come from? What does it remind me of from my past? Or who triggered me? Is this my emotion, or did I get it from somebody else?
And why am I triggered?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, be watchful and careful with your physical exertion today. So, what I'm saying to people is the chart of the day shows that you could overexert yourself. So, pay attention. Don't be controlled by the cosmic energy. My mentor astrologer, Catherine DeJersey, said to me when I studied astrology and learned it, and she said to me, Dear, don't live your life by astrology. Now, she was a phenomenal astrologer, told me I'd move from Chicago to out of Chicago. I told her she was crazy. I moved to California. She told me I'd meet someone really significant in my life. And I met my husband the day and time she told me I'd meet somebody. But I never lived my life expecting or changing things, or those things would not have happened. So you take in the advice, you try it on for yourself, and you use it appropriately. And then for the integrated world, I said, use your intuition and instincts to sensitively tune into situations that may be unhealthy for you on a subtle level. Pay attention to where you are as well as what you are there for. Pay attention to your emotionality. Remember, past experiences can help you moderate current choices about where you go and what you expose yourself to. Be careful about those people you have around you. Choices you make set in motion events that impact your future. So, how does that resonate with you, Maya?
I'm still kind of stuck in the amazingness of that you've made something super simple for any user, but how complex it is when you're talking about the tree of life, the four worlds, the astrological and planetary things for the day. Like you don't see visually like how complex um like the
Should I stop sharing or should I leave it up?
um that's up to you.
Okay.
The complexity of what's involved as far as the construction or the
My analysis of each day.
yes, yes. And I love that there's a spot to write in. Um,
And I recommend that people who get the book get a dedicated journal as well.
oh yes, absolutely.
And there are resources that I mention in the book that we set up a link on my website to those resources. And there are some meditations. There are some, that one resource is empowered self-talk, a 5-minute audio I did that shifts negative thinking to positive thinking. So periodically in a day, I'll recommend a resource that could help
Oh,
somebody transform the energy
that applies to that day
that
and
day.
the four worlds of that day.
Right.
Okay, okay.
And we even
Mm.
printed a glossary of terms so people can understand some of the terminology.
Right.
It's the tree of life. When I studied it for more than 15 years. Every day I did a reading. I went through the Builders of the Adytum course on the tree of life, and it was very extensive, including divination, gematria, color, and sound, the tattvas. It's a complex,
Hmm.
complicated study. And most people are not going to study the tree of life.
Right.
But what I can do with my background is what I did, which is distill it out into usable advice for every day of the year.
Yes.
And um, in the Noble Energy Maps, one of the components that's so fascinating is that each of the 8 charts that go into the composite accesses a developmental critical time in human development. So it actually anchors the physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental worlds. And in the 3D mental world, we have 3 months from the time we're conscious to self correct and modify what we want to manifest. So remember, it takes a baby 3 months to become capable of making choices that impact their environment. So take that template and think about the advice I'm giving in the Cosmic Guidance book and the fact that the mental world is going to play out over 3 months. So if you use the advice and you begin to expand your consciousness into the multidimensional perspective of the self, you no longer are limited by conscious unconscious. You're navigating all the dimensions of yourself, and you have time to correct missteps, misperceptions, and emotional reactivity.
Yes.
So you're empowered.
And I love that. And I love that there's writing room and there's a way that you can tailor it to your own spiritual practices and yourself, whether it be like a mantra or whether it be an affirmation or a meditation or whatever,
One of
that,
my clients takes a picture of it every day and refers to it daily.
well, I was thinking about that, like on how some people put that kind of thing on,
On their refrigerator.
yes, on the refrigerator or their bathroom mirror. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. And
Right.
it can be a reminder as you walk by on looking at reflecting or thinking of, it kind of almost reminds me of these oracle cards I have too,
Right.
which, yeah, that's so it allows that visual reminder so that
Mhm.
you're continuing and continually perpetuating that energy and that mindset for the day.
Right. And my guess is that my husband and I are going to keep it on our kitchen table. But when I gave it to Marvin to look at yesterday, because I just got my author's copy yesterday. So I gave it to him and he read yesterday's and I went downstairs and he said, well, the book looks really beautiful, but the advice for today, oh my God, it was so apropos. So that's always nice to hear.
Yes, yes. So this is just to recap. So this is laid out based on the 4 worlds, and it gives you an action, something to reflect on, journaling prompts, writing space for you to set intentions, to track progress. And since it's evergreen, it's something that you can buy
every
and
year.
it will apply no
Yeah.
matter when the purchase time is.
Well, since this one just came out, I have a year to write the next one, which I
Woo!
will, yeah,
And you're
just
so busy.
I am so busy, but I love what I do, so it's not work. And I encourage people. I think there are some places in here where I say, love what you do and do what you love.
Yes.
And if you're not in that space, find the space where you can be there, because we all have the right to be free, to love what we're doing, and for it to not be work and a job that we dread getting up in the morning to go do.
Right. Right.
And sometimes I've asked myself, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, what would I do? Well, I would still be helping people. I would be facilitating. I would be
Mm-hmm.
writing about it because I love my work. And it's an exploration. Um, one of the authors I really love is Napoleon Hill. And I just got a collection of his unpublished books and I'm reading them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Napoleon Hill, but just the fact that you got a whole collection of unpublished books, that's awesome.
Yeah. He's Napoleon Hill was basically the father of marketing. His
Oh.
book Think and Grow Rich
Oh.
and Laws of Success. I actually taught a class on his work uh, in the early 80s because when I was starting out in my practice, I had a friend who was very successful businessman. And I looked at him one day and he didn't even have a college education. And I said to him, how did you learn to be so successful? He said, Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And I got Think and Grow Rich and read it and wrote little notes, put it in a notebook. Year later, I had achieved my goals.
That's awesome.
So I'm a researcher, I'm a perpetual student. And when I find something that's valuable, I like to share it. So what the four worlds is the most powerful psychological concept that has been kept from the public. And it's time for people to recognize they're multidimensional beings with the capacity to soar.
Right.
And you and I, we both have that same mission, I think.
Yes. Yes, we do. Yes. So I know this is kind of gonna sound like I know this is gonna kind of sound like a premeditated sales pitch, but it's really not. Um, when I'm thinking about your publication and all the different ways that I would use it, um, and that it's still spinning, I can't help but to think about how well that your Reiki books would like magically work well with this.
Mhm.
When you're talking about the purposes of spiritually transforming and things like that, and I can't help because I am thinking, hand positions, the mudras, and I'm thinking about mantras, and I'm thinking about how all the different things that I would use, and it makes me think of your Reiki guide. I'm assuming that there is, energy movement, and there's hand techniques and positions, and
I have a copy. I do have my books here. So we have two Reiki books so far.
Mhm.
The first degree and the second degree workbook. I have a second degree manual that's going to be integrated into this workbook.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, the second degree Reiki workbook for anyone who knows Reiki is designed as actually a workbook. And
Okay.
what I did in the workbook was with people who have second degree Reiki, because second degree Reiki works on time and space. So I thought of all of the developmental stages and how if somebody did a treatment, for example, if you did a treatment on your first day of school, if there was any trauma, the treatment could release that trauma. So spiritually transforming emotionality through use of a healing modality.
Right.
So each of the worlds has specific modalities that work specifically for it. And one of the things I realized was that when my children were young, I had already finished my PhD. And I was stumped. I studied with great developmental psychologists, Larry Kohlberg, who was big into Piaget, and Tom Gordon came out of the same department I did. And I had these two young kids. And when they were upset, I didn't know what to do with them. So I studied parent effectiveness training. And now I recognize that all of the communication tools that are part of my professional toolbox, active listening, clean language, imago therapy, Gutman therapy, solution-focused therapy, CBT, all of these different techniques are specific to a state of consciousness in one of the worlds. And if you know which tool to use because you're identifying the world that it's needed in, you get results. If you're using the wrong tool for the wrong world, it falls flat. So,
That makes perfect sense.
yeah.
It
And
does.
nobody's talked about that. So I'm just beginning to recognize it myself. Like, oh, that's why I did all that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I needed to study that. That's why I needed to look at that. And, the body map is based on the Kabbalistic tree of life, chakras, astrology, the I Ching, and developmental psych, developmental stages. So it's complex, and each of those areas has its own tools. And the more we're educated, the more empowered we are.
And the better use of the tools for the right scenarios. Yes.
Exactly. So that's why in the Cosmic Guidance book, at specific times, I suggest specific tools.
Right. Right.
And I ask mostly throughout the book, I ask clean questions, which are questions that have no auditory, visual, or kinesthetic cues. Because if you have any of those cues, you're talking to a specific component of the personality, and it may not be relevant for where that person is.
Oh, I love that.
So clean language, which was developed by David Grove and his wife, Kai Davies Lynn, are questions like, and this question is for anyone who ever is in an argument with someone. You say to the other person, what would you like to have happen now? Stops the argument cold.
Right.
Another key question, when let's say you've done some work on your emotional reactivity, a good question to ask yourself is, with all of this, what do I know now? And what difference does it make? Both clean questions, because there's no input other than what you come to inside yourself.
Right.
One of my cats.
Mhm. I'm sure there's lots of squeaky toy noises in the background on my audio too. So, would you agree then that the Reiki publication would go very well? I mean,
It
even the
was,
first degree,
oh yes, yes.
that's what I
And
was thinking.
if anybody has studied Reiki, please make sure it's part of the USUI system, USUI. Um, when Reiki was introduced in the West, um, some of the people who were initiated as teachers did not respect the lineage and the formula for attuning people. And
Oh,
they changed things. So many people do not have real Reiki and think they do. It's very important to trace your lineage to the Usui system through the Reiki Alliance. It's the only legitimate Reiki organization that exists. I
wow.
had the experience of meeting Mrs. Takata, who brought Reiki to the West. I attended a Reiki class in 1977, not knowing anything about it, and Mrs. Takata was there at the class.
Cool.
So in my Reiki manual, um, both of them, especially this one, the first degree Reiki manual, the positions, and I'll just hold it up. I break the positions into the four worlds in terms of what they're treating mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And what I say they treat came directly out of my notes from Mrs. Takata.
Wow. No joke, you do have that split down into the four worlds too.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's
Um,
awesome.
everything I do now is broken into the four worlds because it's essential that we understand our psyche in that way.
I would agree with you. And I know that you have this information on your website, but you're also doing weekly
Free webinar
webinars. Yes.
every Thursday at noon Eastern time.
And these are free, and you go through the four worlds and where things take.
Well, when I'm doing my webinars, I never know what I'm going to do. I usually ask the Holy Spirit to guide me,
Okay.
and I'll get a hit as to what to focus on. This past week, we focused on goals. And I have a worksheet for the four worlds that breaks goals down into the mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, and integrated, what I love, what sustains me, and what I want to release.
I
So it's
love
a different
that.
way of thinking of goals. And all of the recordings are on my website. You need to just join as a free member to get them. And all of the worksheets are also posted.
Awesome. So, what is your website for our listeners to find this at?
www.noble, Noble, energywellness.com.
Awesome. And for our listeners that are interested in your publications, um, you have a few books out. I mean, we only discussed today the Cosmic Guidance
Right.
and the Reiki manuals, but you also have Astrology Essentials and Understanding the Charts,
Yes.
Cosmic Secrets, A Guide to Self-Discovery. There you go.
The Cosmic Secrets talks about the energy maps, and the astrology I wrote the way I would have liked to learn astrology. Because when I started studying astrology in 1971, I thought it was the hardest thing I'd ever studied. And I already had my PhD from University of Chicago with 295 variables in my dissertation. So
Wow.
I am a researcher, and I laid out the book, and I have some very beautiful illustrations in the book that I created. I did all the illustrations. And my business partner, Cindy, helped me.
Is
Yeah.
there anything else that you would like to add about cosmic guidance, about your publications, about the Tree of Life, or anything that may have come up in your thoughts that we haven't covered?
Well, the energy maps that I use are an expansion of the human design body chart, which is very incomplete. So anyone who's had a human design reading and is being limited by the definition of type, in my research, and I was the research that I did the research everybody quotes, that they said 35% of the population are manifesting generators. That is only in the mental world. In the integrated world, 95% of the population, at least, are manifesting generators, which means God designed us to be whole, to have every cosmic energy imprinted into our energy field by the time we're 3 months old. And anyone who tells you that you are one thing and not a whole person, not capable of manifesting your deepest soul purpose, is misguiding you and giving you misinformation.
Agreed.
Um, Part of my mission is to correct the misinformation out there and to show people their true chart, which is an integrated chart. And we can break it down and see how things turn on and off and do all of that. But if you only needed one chart, use the integrated, because that's far more true of who you are than any other design. And in the next month or so, my multidimensional noble energy map program will be finished, and people will be able to get a free report as well as a premium report.
Nice.
And from Noble Energy Wellness website, you can always book time with me and have a reading.
Yes. Yes.
So
So when you're talking about becoming a member on the site so you can do the webinars, is there actually like I know sometimes that subscribe you can subscribe to like newsletters or updates.
yes,
Um,
once we have your email, I do send out periodic things. I try not to fill people's email box.
mhm, mhm.
Uh, so they get a reminder for the course. They get a update when we've posted the we generally post the webinar, the transcript, and materials by the end of the weekend.
Okay.
So anyone who gives us their email, they get updates.
Okay, perfect.
And if anybody comes to the webinar, when I taught a Four Worlds class in October, anyone who was a regular at the webinar got a big discount.
Nice.
Mhm.
So that's a possibility for future.
Right.
Um, yeah, the reason why I was asking about the email is because I always forget about the webinar.
Ah,
And it's nice, if you do the emails to have that reminder and to know that you
right.
can go back and watch it or look at the notes or the reminder that it's coming up again.
Mhm.
Um,
I'll make sure you're on my mailing list.
because our lives, they get busy and
Yeah,
you get forgetful. It's kind of
right. And the recordings are always there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would really like to thank you for sharing your new publication. It's so exciting to get the details before it's even a final
Out.
copy, the pre-order availability, all of that. That's awesome. And you're so fun to listen to. The details and the mind-blowing things that you talk about. Like always afterward, I'm sitting and thinking, and she said this, and what is this, and how would that fit for me, and what would I do with that? And so
Well,
it's so
thank you.
enjoyable. It's so enjoyable.
I'm happy to come back anytime you want me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
And I thank all your listeners for listening.
Me too. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Seeking the Light of a Thousand Suns.
And thank you so much.
Thank you, too. All right. Well, I'm going to say blessed be to our listeners.
And I'll echo that.